I've been in the very large aerospace and defense primes for my entire career. I grew up at Northrop, started right there from graduate school. However, I was in mostly their R&D area. And so I did a lot of advanced development work for them. And we were always limited, even though we tried not to be, we were always limited by processes and just how fast we could go. And so when Stoke reached out to me and told me about what they were doing, their vision, their mission, and then I got a chance to meet the team, I could immediately see the wonderful culture that they had put in place here and how fast they were moving and how quickly they were able to execute and accomplish the vision that they had set out for themselves. I was pretty amazed, inspired, and I found it to be incredibly exciting. And so I immediately, wanted to kind of jump in and join and figure out how I could help.
Yeah. So Kelly, you're talking about when you joined Stoke Space at the beginning, you're meeting the founders. What was it about their drive or what they'd accomplished so far that really caught your attention? Because you've talked to other people in the industry, but what was it about them that stood out to you?
They had a very well thought out thesis. So they had done their homework. They were not being I guess cavalier in what they were speaking about, or and they didn't go out lightly, and they really put a lot of homework and thought into what they wanted to accomplish and how there was a hole in the current industry to do that. And so I could tell that, and I could see quickly how solid their thesis was and what they wanted to accomplish. I understood the challenges that they were going to face, but they all seemed like very doable things that they could get through. So I would say it was the vision and how well they articulated it, and as well as their just honesty with what they were going to face.
Yeah. What was the reaction from your peers in the industry? I mean, you're going from these big, well-established, known names to this sort of newer player. I mean, was there a lot of encouragement? Was there like, what are you doing? Like, what was the reaction?
So I'm going to be very candid with you. I have a bunch of peers in the industry still, who I respect very much. And after I had interviewed with Stoke and I had talked with them, I was just, reaching out to a lot of my old mentors and talking with them about the opportunity and what they thought. And I was describing some of my just general frustrations with the aerospace and defense industry, the legacy, and what I was feeling. And I was kind of attributing it to one company versus another. And one of my friends said, Kelly, I think that is just what you will experience everywhere in this industry right now, and at these types of companies. And so it was funny because I think he was actually trying to use it to keep me in the industry, but instead it did the exact opposite. It actually was like, interesting. So it's really just the way it is. And so once I understood that, I thought, I really want to try something new. A lot of people, they join startups a lot earlier in their career, and they have that opportunity, and they never look back and they think, I shouldn't have done it. They always talk about it with such excitement, and just something that they wish. They're very thankful that they did it. They're happy with where they are now, but they're very thankful that they had that experience. And so, I wanted to try that for myself. So I would say some people, I'm sure, thought I was crazy. Other people, were very jealous. And then both, a lot of people felt both of those things. They thought I was crazy, but then was also very jealous that I got the opportunity to do it.
Jealous of the craziness. Yeah.
Exactly. And I would say, some of them, outright admitted that, they admire the fact that I took that step and that they wish they could do the same thing. So I find myself very lucky to have this opportunity at this point.
That's awesome. We've got some people listening to this conversation that don't know a lot about what Stoke Space is. Can you kind of sum up how you explain it to people who are in or outside of the industry? And also, a little bit about like what is the excitement that that you're experiencing right now, having left the big legacy players, now moving over to Stoke Space?
Sure. So we are going to make launches or access to space routine and low cost. And we're going to do it by using fully reusable rockets. So right now you've heard quite a bit about SpaceX and some other companies looking to reuse the first stage. However, the second stage right now is thrown away. And so we're looking to create a first and second stage that we can recover and continue to use over and over again, which will then drive down the overall cost for launches and essentially democratize space. So allow access to many different companies, many different players to put satellites into orbit and to really jumpstart the economy up there.
Yeah. On this series, we have interviewed people who talk about reuse, and a lot of times
Mhm.
it's in the packaging industry or the textiles industry. This is on a whole different scale. We're talking about rockets that are going to space. Can you talk a little bit about like why is it a problem that there is such little reuse in the industry currently?
Sure. So there's a couple of problems. The first is obviously from a sustainability perspective. You want to minimize the footprint that you have and reduce the amount of debris that is in orbit. The debris that's floating around, it is incredibly fast and it will cause severe damage to other satellites and useful objects up in space. And so minimizing that debris is going to be huge. And it clutters our beautiful sky. Nobody wants to see that kind of a layer of junk between us and, the broader expanse of space. We need to minimize that. And so by reusing both stages, we can significantly reduce the amount of debris that's left up there. And then, of course, from the overall economics perspective, if you're wanting to make access low cost and routine and reliable and provide it for all kinds of scientific missions, humanitarian missions, communications, all of these different things that just generally improve the quality of life on the planet, you need to reuse that rocket and drive down those costs. For both of those perspectives, that's why we're doing it.
Yeah. How do you think this will, as we get to this place, like you guys are actively working on this, and so it's going to drive down the cost, it's going to be more sustainable. How will this show up for like everyday citizens in their everyday lives? Like they probably won't see a direct connection, but this is going to change things for people, right?
Oh, absolutely. Right now, satellites have a huge impact on our lives. When you think about the weather monitoring, radar, all of those things are all of that information is gathered by satellites that we've placed up there. You can think about it from a defense perspective when you're talking about missile warning, as well as communications and other things like that. But just from everyday people, we use GPS on our phones to navigate from one place to another. That's because of satellites we put up there, the connections that we get when we're in remote areas or just to get data, all of that is provided by the communication satellites that are up there. And then when we talk about, sustainable practices in agriculture and making sure that we have low cost access to food, that is enabled by the monitoring of the conditions for those uses, as well as monitoring forest fires and the ability to predict them, to reduce them, and then to react to them, or even, for disaster recovery and relief. The images that people can provide from satellites up there significantly aid in those efforts. And then, you have, of course, just generally weather monitoring, as I mentioned before, but increasing those capabilities can really help us prepare and prevent natural disasters.
This is why your peers were saying you're crazy, but they're also jealous of where you're spending your
Exactly.
time. Yeah.
Exactly.
You have to have a
Um,
long-term vision to be in this space and to start a new venture because the timelines are different than other industries. Where would you where would you, if you said on this journey that we're setting off on, like where would you say you're at today? I assume you would still consider it early days, even though you've made a lot of progress on things, just considering where you want to take it. But where would you say you are right now, the organization?
I'd say we are still in the early days.
Yeah.
I would say, we're still in, we have some significant scaling to do. And we're looking at our hopper test, which is the first test of our second stage, where it will go up, travel laterally, and then come back down again. And so that will be the first test of our vertical launch and vertical landing kind of capability for that. And so that's coming up shortly. But yes, we are still in the early stages, and our teams are, the culture that we had, started with is still very present. And so we're looking down to quite a bit of growth. But yeah, we're still in the early stages.
Yeah, I'm sure in the industry and with partners and prospective partners, there's a lot of excitement and curiosity around what you're doing. I'm sure there's also some level of skepticism and maybe misconception. Like what are those conversations that you're running into today?
Well, I would say, the biggest test of the viability of a rocket launch company is your first launch. And so I think everybody is waiting for us to demonstrate, put it all together. It's a very, very complex system. So you have all these different components that you're designing, and then you're testing and you're verifying. But until you actually put them all together, you're not completely aware of the interactions and the intricacy, or the complete intricacy of the system. And so that first launch is kind of, the big test to actually show that we can do it. And we're a viable kind of approach. So getting past that and having that demonstration is kind of, I would say, our, the finish line for us.
Do you find that people are sort of trying to hold their excitement until this test and then they will kind of like let that out, or what's the kind of the
No, you know what?
reaction?
I would say this. So any good plan, you have milestones as you go, right? And so as you hit each one of those milestones, the excitement builds. And so I would say, when you first lay out that plan and you show all these different technical milestones and all the different risks that you're burning down, I would say, yes, people are incredibly skeptical. They're excited, but skeptical. And then as you, reach each one of those, and as you show that you're doing it on the, before the day you said you would, and you're showing that kind of natural progression, the excitement builds and builds and builds. And so I would say people are incredibly excited, but not just because of the overall vision, but how well we've been executing to what we said we were going to do, and demonstrating it, not just with PowerPoints and, fancy videos, although we do have those, but with real hardware and real data. And so I would say people are appropriately excited at this time based on what we've been producing.
Yeah. So let's imagine what this looks like on the other side of some successful launches, and you've got the proof points that you're after. What are the benefits to the satellite companies? Like, why is this? You've talked about it a little bit earlier, but why does this matter to them?
Oh, so, satellites, first of all, there's these large constellations that you actually want to put up there. And so you need to be able to do that fast, and you need to have a schedule that you can hit. And you need to do it at low costs in order to make that economic model viable. And so providing all of those is incredibly essential. We have a couple of providers right now that are doing that. But if you think about it in, like surface streets versus a freeway, right? So surface streets, even though you have the ability to get to your destination, it's going to be slow, especially during rush hour or whatever. You're going to, be behind all these people waiting your turn. And in general, it's just going to, you're going to be, sitting in traffic for quite a while. But a well-functioning freeway where you have all these different lanes, you're going to be able to, get where you need to go. And so we're providing additional lanes for, the satellite providers to reach orbits. In addition, some of these larger launch providers aggregate a bunch of satellites. And so they drop them off at one location, and then the satellites themselves have to maneuver and get to their final orbit. That takes a lot of time to do, a lot of resources to do. And so because we've sized our rocket, we've optimized it for the commercial market, we can directly place those satellites into whatever orbit they want to do. And that significantly reduces the time that it takes for them to become operational, which maximizes the operational life and more quickly gets them producing revenue.
Yeah, that's cool. So what I'm hearing now, this will be a dumbed down version of I think what you just said, but what I'm hearing is because you have reuse, because you have smaller payloads, you're able to provide a lower cost to the satellite companies, which everybody's going to like. And you can be a little bit more surgical with where you have the placement, which allows them to burn less of their resources to get to the place that they need to go, which reduces their costs and probably potentially maybe puts them into play a little bit faster, all of which was not possible before because they were using more expensive, less frequent, farther off of the routes, things like that. Is that about right?
Yes, you said that much better than I did.
No.
Yes, that is 100% correct.
Yeah, that's great. And so I think for people outside the industry, I'm outside the industry, I would think, oh, do we need advances in satellites? It seems like it's working well, but what I'm hearing from you and your team is that like we're barely scratching the surface. There's just so much more that we can do with more access. There's a lot more that can be done in space and done better as we advance the industry.
Yes, I would say to folks who are probably not tracking what satellites currently do and the potential, you're right. It may be hard to understand just how much data they provide and how much they improve our quality of life and how much more they could do. And so there's many different type of sensors that are used to take pictures of the Earth. And depending on that type of sensor, you can get different types of information and that allow all of us to just live better lives. In addition, you can think about, some very remote locations and folks who do not have access to all the information and data that we have, and how, smaller their world tends to be. And so providing the communication satellites and those access to that data, it really broadens, their horizons and their understanding of the planet and improves their quality of life. So, or if you think about, GPS, sometimes you lose signals, sometimes you have it, sometimes it's not great. All of putting more satellites up there or more accuracy helps us in that regard. I don't know if you recall when you were trying to figure out where to go and you would go to Yahoo Maps and type it in and you'd print out your directions, right? And now you have it on your phone, and that's because of the satellites that are up there. Or you would get your phone signal would drop and you would not have anything, and you wouldn't be able to get information, and now you can. Or weather predicting. We always criticize weather predicting for how horrible it is, but it has gotten better, and all of that is because advances in the weather monitoring satellites, or even disaster recovery and relief. Some of these really, really horrible natural disasters that occur, you utilize satellites to help people and provide the aid that they need. So it seems, it seems like that we don't quite understand what more they can provide until you really dive into it and to see just how much more they can do for us, and how much more they can improve our life here and just improve the health of the planet. Which I think is really critical. Just the monitoring of the planet and the ability for us to provide either mitigation or stop various activities, and being able to respond to those, I think is huge.
Yeah, we've had the benefit of working or speaking with a lot of different groups who are using Vision AI through satellite imagery, right, to keep very close track on things and have such precision data on things that before would have been very difficult to do, and would have had to use like physical measures and things like that. So it is pretty wild to see how all this comes together and how the ecosystem relies on different pieces to continually moving forward. I was going to ask about some of the technical hurdles that you've overcome so far. It sounds like this is like a constant thing. There's always something that is the next technical hurdle to overcome. Are there any since you've joined that you thought, wow, I can't believe we cleared that one, or I was worried we wouldn't be able to get past that one, or just one that you felt, extra proud of as you kind of passed that check mark and moved on to the next one?
I Right when I was joining, they did the first firing of the entire stage 2 engine. And so that was a huge deal. And that, that was yes, we're very, very proud of everybody contributing to that, and joining in the push in order to make that happen and to succeed. And then testing the engine with the integrated heat shield, and be able to get that working, and proving that out. That was huge. And then, of course, the next one coming up, which is the hopper test. So that's, you know, seeing that happen, I think that's going to be a large technical hurdle that we get through and we demonstrate. So I've been in the electronics industry for a while, and that's where my technical background is. And so, seeing how fast these, I guess these rocket scientists, right? These rocket engineers have been moving, and I'm beginning to understand how quickly they're moving through their technical challenges, but I don't necessarily have the technical context, that Andy and Tom have, to understand just how quickly they're moving. However, we have our avionics team, and they're building all of the electronics for the rocket, and so the avionics controls, steers, and does all the thinking, essentially, for the rocket. And so I have experience in that particular area. And there was a couple of weeks ago, they were putting together the entire avionics package, and they were testing it out for stage 2, and got it assembled, and they were turning it on that day. And an intern had walked into the break room, and I had commented, don't be discouraged if it doesn't, if you guys don't get it working, this weekend. In my experience, it takes a while to work out those bugs, and it could be some time before you figure out exactly how to get it going. And she said, "Oh, okay." And the next day, the entire thing was working. And and so that definitely put it in perspective, and into a technical context, so that I could fully understand just how amazing the people here are, and how quickly they're moving.
Yeah. I
So
love
I don't
that.
know
You're
if I
setting
answered
this.
your question. I think I
No,
veered
that's good. I
off.
love the story though. You're like setting these expectations like, hey, this can take some time. Don't be defeated. And they're like, oh, we got it.
Exactly. I was humbled. I felt I felt a little bit like, oh my God, what was I doing in my earlier life that it took me so long to get that done?
It's probably also an encouraging feeling. Like you made a good
Oh,
choice and you're like, wow, we can really make a lot of progress here.
yes, I 100% agree, that I made a fantastic choice, and that I can really, I guess, experience, the speed that I kind of was seeing when I interviewed and first started working here. But I'm really beginning to understand the full impact of it.
When you think forward for not just your organization, but the industry, what is your vision, and where do you see things moving? I mean, there's been a lot of movement, and from my view, it seems like there's a lot more attention on the space, just because there's some big names attached to some of these new innovations. But where do you see it going in the next, I don't know, 5 or 10 years, or what have you?
So I'm going to start off with a little bit depressing. And I would say that there's a lot of rocket companies out there right now. And I do think that in the coming years, there's going to be some consolidation. And so I don't necessarily believe that all the theses hold water. And so I think we'll see some natural pruning of all the, of a number of those companies. Mine won't be one of them, by the way. But I think you'll see a number of, just the overall options kind of narrow down. And after that occurs, I think you're going to see a couple of very strong, rocket companies out there that are providing launch services and competing with each other to drive down the cost, increase the cadence, and just really provide much more routine access to space. And so that's where I kind of see us going. I see it almost as a, airplane travel, where you can book a ride on an airplane and you know that there is going to be, numerous flights occurring to get where you need to go. And so I almost see it kind of taking on that type of context, where you can just book with any of these rocket companies, and you'd have your preferred ones based off of, who treats you the best and how quickly they get up there and how much they charge. But there's going to be that competition that exists, that provides a very strong industrial base, as well as many different options for the customers.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think it mimics what we see in a lot of other industries. One of the unique things about this industry is just the cost to entry is so high,
Yes.
and the resource so resource intensive, so complex, as well as the safety aspect of it. So in some ways, it feels like there's been a lot of innovation in like very large organizations, and now it's advanced to this point where you can innovate a little bit faster, and so now everybody's trying to be the one, and there'll be some natural pruning that happens. It's inevitable. Like it doesn't seem like that could possibly move forward with everybody succeeding, right? Like there will be some whittling down of who does it better and first and those types of things.
But you mentioned resources, and so I think one of the, I'm going to say this and it sounds a little trite to say it because I think everybody does, but I really believe that talent is one of the most critical resources that we face. And so I believe that right now, the amount of engineers who have experience in the discipline and who are studying this discipline needed in order to, make us successful has dramatically increased. And so I think from that perspective, I think we're in a very, very unique situation. I like to think of it, back when we started the space race a long time ago, it kind of started people dreaming about space and what it meant and what you could do there. And, NASA was, everybody loved NASA. They were doing so much, and, people wanted to be rocket scientists or astronauts or all these different, careers, and people, kids dreamed of it, and people specifically went into those fields in order to study it. And so, people loved it. It was inspiring and it was awesome. And I think, in the earlier, part of the early 2000s and in the 90s, there was a frustration with what type of movement are we seeing? How fast are we going? And people, the excitement kind of died down. And I think there was some latent frustration that existed because we weren't taking full advantage of those dreams and that talent base that existed. And I think that, SpaceX tapped into that. They knew it was there, and they lit a fire, and really allowed people to tap into that and pull all of those dreams and all of those people together in order to perform. And so, I think it's almost reawakened. And so there's this huge amount of talent that wants to participate in this new space and wants to be a part of it. And so I think we're lucky that we live in, this particular time, that we have such a strong talent base to pull from.
I agree with that. Certain industries go in and out of vogue, and everybody wants to, major in this, and then they don't. And I think you're right about what was the sort of catalyst for as an outsider, I can see that, right? It's this is what lit a fire. And it does feel like on the whole, there's a lot of, some of the brightest minds were going into things like social media, tech, And then I think they became disillusioned with the impact of what that was, and now you're seeing people move over to some more impactful technology companies where they see it seems like longer term vision that they're chasing and they're after, in really tough problems, that have big consequences if it doesn't work out right. So it does. I would agree with that, and I think I see this in different industries, maybe tangential industries. So it's encouraging, isn't it, when you see the talent and the sharpest minds going into places that you want them to be.
Oh, no, it's inspiring. And yeah, it's awesome. Yes.
What's the So Kelly, you've been here for a little bit at Stoke Space for a little bit. What's been some of the most rewarding? Is there a reward? Is there a story that comes to mind, or something that just means a lot to you? What's been rewarding for you so far?
I I can't speak highly enough about the team here. So I think they're absolutely phenomenal. And I've led large organizations in different companies, and I have been, frustrated by my ability to affect change. Even at certain levels, you think to yourself, why can't I do this? Like, I should be able to do this. And just the overall bureaucracy and being able to provide the right incentives and rewards for folks who are doing this amazing work, it's incredibly difficult to do. And so I have, now that we can do work so fast and we can work at such incredible speeds, it is so easy to provide I guess the team with the support that they need. And so I can recall a we were moving really fast at the end of last year, and we had gone through a number of demonstrations, and the teams were really pushing, and they were very dedicated. And I think it was Tom, who is the co-founder, said we should give people this, a day before Thanksgiving. We should give them to them as a holiday. And we should just tell them to take it off and spend with their families. And they've been, and spend that time with them and tell them that we appreciate both the employees and the employees' families for doing this with us. And I was able to say, okay, done. And it wasn't even, I just went in and made that change, and within half an hour, the announcement was out, and people could do it. And so that is so rewarding, to be able to I guess provide that type of things to your employees so quickly, and be able to recognize them. That I was incredibly excited about that. It was so empowering.
Yeah, when it makes sense, you can just make it happen. There's not a lot of layers in between to
There's
make a decision.
no, and even even if I guess there was additional layers. There was no justification that needed to happen. There was just an acknowledgement that our people were doing such good work, and they needed to spend some time with their families. And I would say even just the acknowledgement of that, from
Yeah,
the leader, and saying we need to take care of them. I think
yeah.
that as well.